for the upcoming year. And with that, I'm going to turn to the school committee chairperson to share with you a little bit about how those priorities were developed for the school committee.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us here tonight. Thank you, Mary, for inviting us to come here tonight. Love this holiday spirit as well. Some of us have got them on last week at our school committee meeting. The entire school department came walking down with their wonderful holiday sweaters, so they joined us in doing that last week. So we are here this evening to really begin to have this dialogue about what our school budget will look like for next year. And in order to give you a good understanding of how we've come to, or not yet, but how we've begun this process, it's really important to sort of almost back up to July of this year. And it took us until July of this year in order for the current school committee to be able to create a list of goals. And prior to that, we had been entrenched in the work of this current year's budget, as well as hiring a new superintendent and then trying to manage a school system support a school system through a pandemic. So it took until July. It seems a little late when we start talking about why it took us until that point, but in July we met for a couple of evenings to really begin to pull together all of the information that we had been hearing from constituents, that had been gathered from surveys and what people were looking for in their next superintendent. It really gave us some pretty great information as far as what we should do as a school committee, what our goals should be. And to that end, we ended up coming up with, I believe, 5 goals that we really felt as a committee would impact the school in a positive way, and to then begin to look through everything we looked through, decisions we made through these lenses. So one of our goals was the graduation rate. Through our surveys and through speaking to our constituents, through speaking to students, through speaking with anyone in the community, and looking at data, it was very important that we take a look at our graduation rate and encourage growth in our graduation rates. And we have a pretty aggressive increase that we'd like to see, and that is to increase in percentage each year to reach a 95% graduation rate by 2025. We are currently at, and I'm sorry, I don't know this number off the top of my head, 80. Okay, we're currently at an 80% graduation rate, and so we would like to see that to move up to 95%. We also, in order to support graduation rates, we know that state mandated testing, we want to see our kiddos meet or exceed those state standards. That's another one of our goals. That goal needs to be supported by our budget. And then the budget itself. The budget itself is something that, as school committee members, we want to ensure fiscal responsibility and make sure that the needs of the Auburn School Department and the needs of our learners is supported by the community through our budget. We also talked about communication, which I think this has been the year to really test. Are we communicating too much? Are we not communicating enough? How often are we communicating? What are we mandated to communicate, and in what ways? So communication has been on all points this year, and I think you really have to be living under a rock to not be paying attention to where our cases are or communication from our schools. And then the last is teacher effectiveness and really supporting our teachers and our staff in ways that will help to increase their knowledge of teaching, as well as whether it be curriculum, whether it be whatever professional development they might need in order to sort of it all holds up these graduation rates. So the budget needs to reflect the goals that we have presented and that we're working hard for. And Dr. Brown has action steps that she needs to take in order to meet these goals. So with that being said, that's sort of the foundation of where we're at as a school committee and what we're working for through the school committee. So I will turn it over to, there are some, and then we'll move on. We do have some fixed cost. We have some different talking points to talk with you about tonight. So I'm going to turn it over to Adam for just a minute so that if you wouldn't mind talking about our, of course with budgets, just like your household budgets, there's sort of budgets that go up, budgets that go down. We have some things that are pretty fixed and we thought it'd be important. Before I do that, this not on?
Yeah, just if you could, just so we all know, we're testing a new increased or upgraded Zoom capability tonight. So we have a new hardware and software, so we might want to just play around with the mics a little bit. Sometimes we can't hear you on this side, so we're going to be playing around with that in the back as well as here, but if you could speak a little bit closer, I think that will help.
Okay, we ran into this last week at the school committee meeting too, trying to move. I could have used my recess voice too, it's pretty good.
No, I don't want to, no PTSD on that.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm happy to go over what we went over with the school committee a few weeks back, which is the fixed costs for increases for next year that we've already identified based on negotiated contracts and agreements that are already in place. So as I'll just walk through these. So settled contracts for next year, teachers' salary increase is about $765,000. Administrator increase, $44,000. Health insurance, we won't know the actual rate increase until April. So our standard practice, we budget a 10% increase, and with the hopes it'll be less. But using the 10%, that number is $573,000. Fixed costs related to leases for technology is $155,000. And our debt service is $171,000 increase. So I'll just get into that a little. We have the first interest payment on the new high school coming due in next year's budget. However, we have some expiring debt that is more than some of the new CIP borrowing. So the full impact of the $250,000 or so of new EL debt is offset somewhat by expiring debt. So that's where that $171,000 number comes from. So total fixed costs that we've identified as of this date is about $1.7 million. So those costs alone would be a 3.7% increase in total spending over the current year budget. And that, it's important to say, those salary numbers do not include some positions whose contracts are still being negotiated, custodians, ed techs, secretaries, as well as all of the non-union staff. So those numbers are not included in that. So obviously, whatever those are would increase that number as well.
So you don't have a high case scenario? This is without that, but do you have a high case scenario as well? I mean, could this be 1.9?
We don't have that worked out at this point. No, we just identified the fixed costs for this exercise.
So as part of that, I do want to point out to the council that to date, the school committee has done its own negotiations. And to put that in context for you, if we were to hire Drummond Woodsum at $450 an hour, my very conservative estimate is we would have spent $14,000 to date in fees. And in large measure, it's because the committee has put up their time, and thanks to Faith and Brian, because they've done hours and hours, and Karen negotiating memorandums of understanding. They've negotiated 2 contracts, they're about to settle a 3rd, negotiate a 4th. And it's great to have in-house talent so you don't have to pay somebody else to come and do that for you. So I think I'd like to publicly acknowledge the work and time that they put in, because they're certainly not charging $450 an hour to the city to get those contracts settled. Thanks. And I don't know if Brian or Faith wants to add at all to that.
Brian or Faith, want to add to that?
No, I mean, I think we've come up with some pretty good, fair, equitable contracts. We looked at the committee for some early advice, kind of where their guidelines were, found out what the association's guidelines were, and we met in the middle, and we avoided the legal fees, which was nice. We didn't have to go to mediation. In the end, the committee was happy with the contracts, and the associations were happy with the contracts. So we actually got some pretty good kudos from the nutrition folks that said this was probably the best contract that they had gone through, because they were treated fairly, respectfully. We listened, and in the end, we came out with a very good contract. So, like Dr. Brown said, we're working on the custodial contract right now. We have the ed techs and other personnel that's coming up, and then I think the teachers is later next year, right? So we got a few more to go. But
think, and I'll pause for questions in just a moment, but one of the things I think I really want to put on your radar as well is that every October 1, schools need to report what we have for students, how many students we have, what our enrollment is. The City of Auburn is trending pretty much exactly with where the rest of the state is, where right now we have a 4% decrease in enrollment as we stand right now. So that is from October 1 to 2019 to October 1, 2020. All factors and everything, every projection that I've seen, everything we have read is telling us to not expect that this is going to continue, that these are families who have, for their own personal choices, chosen to homeschool their children this year, chosen to not send them to kindergarten, chosen to not send them to pre-K, private schools for all those reasons. We also are also trending and really have an understanding that our enrollment will probably not stay at that number, that it will probably increase. There is statewide worry that our pre-Ks and kindergartens next year will show a big growth in enrollment from families who did not choose to send their kids this year. So where the 4% decrease is resting, I just want to put that on your radar as well, that we are not anticipating that for next year, unless, God forbid, circumstances continue.
Can you just take a second if you could? Thank you for that. Just talk to council and myself through what happens with the decrease in enrollment. Specifically, what are we looking at for numbers? You said 4%, so they calculate out to about 120 kids, 115 decrease? Because I think that number, I mean, if there's a state funding formula on a per pupil basis.
Adam has it as well.
What are we looking for? What is 4%?
How the number of children that decrease from.
140.
Yeah.
And Dr. Brown, what's the per pupil reimbursement from the state on education funding that we expect? The per pupil?
Per pupil state education funding?
The per pupil amount that we get from the state.
I'm going to have to look.
Yeah, I can speak to that. I mean, it's like with almost everything involving the state funding formula, it's not that cut and dry, but I can give you a basic number that comes close to answering that. The state uses a number of factors to come up with a per pupil cost. And let me just go to the next page here. For the current year,
So Auburn has historically been under what the state averages per person. So what we spend per person, per student, has statewide been under. However, you're asking the question of what the state gives us per student?
Basically, we're looking for what the delta is. Right now, we have $1.7 million increase in budget. What is going to be the deficit in revenue? I'm assuming, and we're trying to figure out if you lost 100 students, is there going to be a negative impact on the state funding formula to the City of Auburn that will have to be made up?
yeah, the state comes up with that it costs somewhere around $7,000 to meet what they call the essential programs and services for a student. However, it wouldn't be that much per student due to the attendance, the enrollment decrease. What was the number that you wanted? What does 4% represent in terms of number of kids?
There's two numbers.
Yeah.
So
How
our
many
current-
student
Our current
decrease?
enrollment, today's enrollment is 3,393 students.
Compared to last year?
Last year, October 1, 2019 was 3,509. So just under, right around, so say for easy numbers, 3,400 was today's 3,300, no, 3,400.
About 120?
Sorry, it's today's enrollment, and last year we were at 3,509. So 100 students, 109 students.
Okay. And then the second question is, thank you very much for that, Chairwoman. The second question is, on average, how much do we receive from the state for education subsidy per pupil?
So this year, we're receiving about $25 million from the state in round numbers. So, Karen, what did you say last year's enrollment was?
Last year's enrollment was 3,509.
So it's about, yeah, it's about that 7,000 number that I said. It's roughly 7,000 per student.
So we're looking at potentially a deficit in state funding, if they have the same formulas as last year, of around $700,000?
Sorry, it's really hard to hear. Can you repeat that?
I understand. So let me try to speaking up a little bit. We're looking at roughly a deficit of $700,000 in state funding, plus or minus.
I'd say it's closer to $1 million if you just run those rough numbers.
Closer
At a
to $1 million.
4% loss of enrollment times the 7,000. It's closer to $1 million. Now, of course, there's many, many factors that go into it. So, you know, we can't sit here today and try to say what the subsidy will be, but that does give us some sense of how it could impact things.
It's directional.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know. Can you hear me now? We got to get Brian in there to.
It's awful.
I mean, I'm trying to just muscle through it, but it's tough, isn't it?
It is.
So Brian is working on this right now. If you can, it's really going to depend. Each person has to determine how close to this mic you need to be. So if you could have you hear your voice, know where you're at, try to stay right in front of your mic, and we're going to do our best to try to correct it. It's because we've added 17 mics around the room. That's been part of the challenge.
So can you hear me now? Is this better?
I could hear that.
You hear that? Okay, I'm gonna have to go back in time and project a little bit more. So if we're looking at a $1 million decrease in state funding, coupled with $1.7 million in additional costs, we're looking at an increase of local share, if you would, of at least $2.7 million.
Potentially.
Potentially, yes, that's correct.
Has there been any conversation in Augusta about understanding that this might just be a one-off decrease in enrollment statewide and making up for that, i.e. running enrollment on a 3-year rolling basis historically?
Yes, there has.
Okay.
And just so everyone knows, they run it on a 2-year average right now.
Better. Yeah, thank you very much. Those are just my initial questions, just to make sure that the council knew what we're looking at on local share.
Absolutely. So those were do we have any I believe those were the things we really wanted to begin having conversations or making sure that City Council knew exactly what we were facing for next year and what we're looking at right now.
Council, do we have any questions? Any questions for the school committee? Councilor Zania?
This is a very general question. You may not be able to answer it, but when you get past the fixed, what is the next thing that you look at in terms of adding to, subtracting from? Is there one thing in particular that you look at to try and sort of address that $1.7 million? You know, you've got that $1.7 million fixed. Is there something else that you look at to say, we need to reduce here to try and accommodate this? Or we need to add to something?
So, Counselor, I'll take the first stab at that and would welcome my colleagues to join in. The school department's budget is 80% people, and therefore, in order to make a substantive change in the bottom line, you really have to affect people and the workforce that we have. There's no other way to go about it. District budget, school budgets take up about 10%, maybe 5%, and if you add to the employee costs, the fixed costs that Adam talked about, debt, utilities, which we haven't talked about, you're pretty close to 85 or 90% of the school department's budget. So to appreciably affect that, you have to look at your workforce.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I just would add to what Dr. Brown just said with the CARES Act funding that the schools received. I think we proactively made a lot of purchases for next year that potentially could help the budget in the bigger picture. It's not exclusive, it's not going to balance the budget, but it's been kind of a painstaking process to spend some of those dollars down.
Mr. Simpson is absolutely right. We've tried to anticipate some purchases this year through 2021 to avoid those costs in 21-22. Most recently is the discussion at the Finance Committee tonight about paper, which will make Mr. Simpson smile. How many cases are we thinking of buying? 2,500 cases. So, and fortunately, we have the capacity to store that. But again, it's trying to anticipate needs for 21-22 to be used with resources for 2021.
Is there any other cost savings that have happened so far this year with regards to decrease in ed tech staff due to remote learning? Is there any type of carryover? In other words, how do we get to a clear net number of need?
So I'll, again, take the first stab at that, and then people are welcome to join me. Our issue currently with staffing, I don't believe is related to COVID. It's related to a shortage of educators. We're short right now 15, 17 ed tech positions, several teaching positions. We've had to go to agencies for things like school psych support, special ed support, and most recently we've had a very hard time filling 2 fifth-grade positions. So, and again, I don't think that's COVID related. I think that the people just are not there. So that has been our challenge. We do have a very positive piece to share with you, and that's in special education. Typically, our out-of-district placements are either in the red or projected to go in the red this year. And Mr. Carrier, do you want to share the good news?
For the first year, we're actually, at this point, in the black, to the tune of about $56,000. So as it stands right now, $56,000.
That's good. That's great.
What's the total on that, that we spend out of district?
We'll have to look that up. We'll get that for you in just a minute.
So while they're looking that up, I think it's important for City Council to know that the people who do serve on the Finance Committee for the Auburn School Committee and the Auburn School Department do have a depth of knowledge around budget. We have Mr. Simpson, who has lots of knowledge around budget, and of course Mr. Carrier serves on that committee as well. And so it was very important that, in my mind, it was very important that we had people who understood budgets in and out, and where to place some of these key strategic people.
Do we have any, Councilor Gary?
I was complimenting you, Mr. Carrier.
I'm just sitting over here being old. Okay?
I think we all are.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is, when you're talking about salary increases, how much of an increase are we talking about?
What are we talking about?
The percentage of an
Salary increases.
Oh, as far as for next year, so I believe we are talking about total fixed cost and salary, hold on one moment.
As a percentage.
I believe for teachers right now, it's an increase of $765,000. And for administrators, it's an increase of $44,000. That's only our teachers and our admin. That does not yet include our other staff, custodial staff,
As a
ed techs.
percentage?
Yeah, as a percentage?
What's the percentage of an individual
Percentage.
increase?
I think it's a 3%.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, teachers are on steps, so that is not, sorry. Why don't I let the people who negotiate the contracts thoroughly, that would be Faith or Brian, answer that one.
Yeah, the nutrition contract is at 3%. The admins are at 3%. And then the teachers, like you said, are at depends on step. Their contracts are based on, I don't have it in front of me right now. Do you have it in front of you, Adam?
I'd say they probably range from a 3.5 to 5.5, depending where you're at on the scale. That's an estimate.
Was there any consideration about the COVID shortfalls we may or may not have this year, according to funding sources? I mean, if we don't get enough money from the state and the taxes, the city can't afford to take the total hit, so we won't be able to pay you guys as much as you guys think we'll have to pay you guys. So have you guys considered the fact that we may have shortfalls on both sides of the school and city budgets?
So I'll speak, I think I heard you. So the teacher contract was already negotiated. That one was already in the works. That was not up for renegotiation this year. That one was already, regardless of what happens, that one was already in cement. I do know that in looking at other districts, it was important for us to stay competitive so we don't lose workers. I do understand, I think I heard you correctly about a shortfall, is that what revenue shortfall and increasing, absolutely heard you. But it was also important for us to understand that if we didn't meet some of their salary concerns, that we could lose custodial staff, we could lose nutrition staff, we could lose people as well. So there was a fine balance and a fine line to play between. So where they may have had a 3% increase in one area, we may have pulled back in another area.
So if I might, Councilor Gary asked a great question, and this was structured to be a dialogue. We would like to hear from the council some of the things that you're facing as part of your budget deliberations for 21-22.
I'll just kind of give you the overall state of the city, if you would, just from what all the councilors have said since we first got sworn in January. The goal of this council was to keep spending increases below CPIU, Consumer Price Index, urban. Probably going to be, Adam, correct me if I'm wrong, 1.5 to 2% increase. That would be equal to CPIU. Last year, we had a 0% increase in the mill rate, and we're focused on mill rate. So when we look at the overall levy, we have a couple positive things and some negatives. We've done a lot of great work with economic development. A lot of new valuation is coming through permitting, being built now, being planned to be built. That's going to be great for probably 2022. 2021, we're going to have an increase, yes, we assume, we hope. But it might not be enough to increase our overall levy by 2.7 million, just looking at some round numbers right now. So overarching, I mean, this is, again, one of the very first budget conversations we've had, and councilors, please pipe in after I'm done here, but we have to keep our budgets at the municipal and at the school under CPIU2 for an increase to the mill rate, not the budget, but the mill rate. At the end of the day, what is it going to increase and our taxpayers in the city? So that's the bottom line focus. Now, there's some variables, like I said, state funding on the municipal side. I'm going to be lobbying pretty hard on that up in Augusta. City manager will be as well. I ask you those questions because in my conversations with other mayors around the state, we're all starting to get keenly aware of what this decrease in enrollment might do to everybody's municipal budget. So you have a lot of advocates there. And anything I can do and the other mayors in Maine can do to advocate for strong educational subsidies, we'll do. We're there for you. So there's a lot of levers and pulleys that are happening, but we do have to be probably more cautious this year than we have in years prior because of the unknowns. Indications are looking pretty good from a sales tax standpoint, though. Early economic forecasts and actuals are looking pretty good so far this year. So knock on wood, that's a positive. But again, we just found out in Washington that a portion of the second COVID Relief Act did not include state and local direct subsidies. But they did include some education monies there too, which will help. So it is an evolving and dynamic situation. I hope that answers your question. It's a lot of communication, and thankfully this is the best communication I've had as mayor with the school department. And we're starting early, and I want to thank you, Dr. Brown and Chairwoman Matthews, for initiating this so early, because it's critical that we all understand what's going on and keep that communication going.
So we have had meetings. Dr. Brown presented already. We've had our first budget meeting, I would say probably almost a month ago now, so that they really understood, the school department understood school committee parameters. And we are all very hyperly aware of what our communities are going through, and the school committee is very committed to making sure that we are not spending money where money does not need to be spent, and how we can very to be very fiscal. It's our goal to be very fiscal, and I think you can see that already just in saving, $14,000 worth of legal fees just in a couple of, anywhere we can do it, we are doing it ourselves. So, yeah.
Anybody have any other questions or comments? Council on budget, goals? Again, I've spoken in very broad terms. Nothing? Okay. School committee?
Are we on the right track? Right, that is the question, being very fiscally
Are we
conservative.
strictly budget? Just strictly budget?
Strictly budget, yeah. Right track? It's hard with the schedules of when you negotiate, and I think you all did a good job. It's always hard to go into budget negotiations with some big unknowns out there. I compliment you all on doing so. I think you're tracking, and you're as focused as I've ever seen a school committee and admin, which is awesome, unbelievably great. I can't stress it enough. But the dynamic here is going to be very, very challenging. That 2.7 million is a pretty significant number. The decrease in enrollment is significant as well. That does send some concerns. Even if we do hold the line with education subsidies, that's going to be a pretty significant hit. And then you have to, really take an educated guess on whether or not those students are coming back. I know some of those students won't come back. Some of them will. To what level, we don't know. And will we be short educators due to mandatory cuts in order to balance the budget because of decreased enrollment come September? So I don't envy you. We're here to support you on this one, but I think we're tracking, at least with the communication, on the right step. Councilor Carey?
Adam, you provided us earlier this year with the funding formula and that we got to look at. I think that would probably be a good idea to put into a package form or send on up to the council so that they get an idea, because you heard the mayor talking about mill rate and things like that. If people looked at the package that you gave out to us, then they could see the part that the mill rate plays in the funding overall. I think that would be beneficial for the council.
Councilor Milks?
I think this falls a little bit in the budget, I think, but I know that we're in a rock and a hard place given the mandates that we face. But I know that there is feeling and groundswell questioning amongst taxpayers that ongoing, the situation the way that it is, that people are asking questions, what are we paying for? When kids are not in school and we see other places that are not Maine and kids are in school and playing sports and doing other activities, that there is that questioning out there. And so I would be remiss if I didn't bring that point of view forward. I'm not saying I fully agree with all of it, but if we could bring that message to the powers that be above you guys making decisions, because I realize you're getting requirements and being told what to do. So there is a groundswell of people that are very upset with the restrictive nature of what we're forcing our children to put up with and lose in this education system that's costing a lot of people a lot of money, and people are asking, what are we paying for? So in the context of budgets, and I understand it's a terrible spot to be in, we're all in a terrible spot, but I would be remiss if that point of view was not put forward in this. And so
if I might respond to that, Counselor, I would say my staff is working harder than they ever have. We've asked educators to reinvent themselves again and again and again. And we would like to have kids in school more. The steering committee is bringing a plan to the school committee to do just exactly that. But what I'd like you to take away from this meeting is, to your constituents, my staff is knocking themselves out. We've never had a pandemic in my lifetime, all 58 years, and people have had to reinvent, retool, relearn, and teachers are really working hard. So please take that home.
and I do realize that.
Oh, Councilor Lozani?
I just also want to mention, if you read the full packet from tonight, you'll see a number of letters from community members supporting what it is that you're doing and the decisions that you are making and the hard work that the teachers are doing. So read those if you get a chance.
Yeah, thank you.
There's just a follow-up. There's some questions that we had back when we met in our last joint meeting, August, I think, talking about enrollment numbers, which we just got, thank you very much. Also talking about the utilization of technology, AV equipment, what would going back to school look like, counts on classrooms, and the actual enrollment per classes. And I don't have it in front of me. I can pull the minutes from that meeting, and there are some questions they were looking for that you couldn't answer then because it just was too early. I just want to make sure those are answered within your work group, so we understand that. What Councilor Milk said about a lot of parents are questioning, it's just they need more data. We just need to open up some more communication. There's some questions that are outstanding that just need to be answered, and I'm sure there's no wrong or right answer, just answers. Okay. Is there any other questions? No?
I think that there are parents who are probably thinking, why aren't kids in school? But there are also other parents who, from what I've gathered and who've spoken to me, that say, why are we talking about putting kids in school 4 days a week when our numbers are exponentially rising, COVID numbers are rising?
If I could, I just want to keep this on budget
No, I
versus
do,
going
but I'm
back to
just saying
school.
that-
I don't want to get off on the highway because what happens is now we're talking data versus data, and probably not the best place to go at this meeting. We just don't have enough time.
But
Well, that said, if there's-
other people were allowed to comment, Mr. Mayor.
They were, and there was a good, as I keep track, a good point, counterpoint.
And the point was brought about increasing the amount of kids in school, so that's why I'm talking to that, is that there are two sides to each story. There are some parents who are saying that they want their kids in school, and there are some parents who aren't. So we're dealing with both. We share constituents. The city council and the school committee both share the same constituents. So I'm just putting that out there.
No, you're right. Absolutely right.
We hear from both. We hear from both sides. What I will say is that this school committee has not received an email or a phone call or a conversation that is any different. It's the same two messages. Get our kids back in school. Please stay the way you are. So it's the same conversations which need to keep happening. However, we're just still hearing the same messages. No one has come up with anything.
Well, let's follow up on some of those questions we had outstanding, i.e. the number of children in each class and electives, because that was a huge problem when we looked at capacity issues. So let's make sure we can address that now that kids are all enrolled and they're already being set up in second semester or trimester. I get that sometimes confused. So thank you. Is there any other questions on the budget? None?
I was just going to give the number that Councilor Milks asked for. The total out-of-district tuition budget for this year is about $2.4 million.
For special ed.
Thank you.
Okay.
I just had one thing.
Councilor McClung.
If any funding does come through the new stimulus act, can we look at adding Wi-Fi to our streetlights in the city and working together on that?
I'm sorry.
I didn't hear you.
Can I answer that? We brought that up this afternoon in discussions, and I've talked with purchasing, and I've also spoken to you. The bad thing about receiving more money from the CRF is because we did receive some, but it was with the same stipulation that we have until December 31st to have it in hand, not order it, but to have it in hand. And being able to find numbers for everything this short a notice is just not possible, but it was brought up in the meeting this afternoon about working together on that, if we can nail down some steadier numbers in regards to it.
Yeah, it would just be great. Does the AV equipment actually work in the high school, in the schools? The virtual remote equipment? It was slated to be an October, I believe, rollout.
Yes, the Pro AV equipment does work.
Pro AV does work, but it has not been adopted yet?
And I can't hear you, I'm sorry, it has not what?
Has it not been adopted yet?
The Pro AV system is working. It is in all of the buildings. I think East Auburn was the last one to get it today or this week. It varies in terms of use with a very high percentage at the middle school. 70–80% of the staff there are using it. And the elementary teachers are working to be trained and receive professional development. So in terms of actual percentages building to building, it does vary.
Just to go back with Councilor McLeod's question, I just want to make sure everybody heard. What he was talking about was being able to provide broadband access to all areas within our city. For those who do not have Wi-Fi within their home, how can they have access? We've been working internally with the staff, with my staff, on identifying certain neighborhoods that make sense for us to roll this out. We have a smart streetlight initiative that already went in place. We have other communities like South Portland that has leveraged some of these funds to make that happen. One thing that we're missing is it's not shovel ready. And so to Councilor Carrier's comment, we need to make sure we have the project that's shovel ready, it's ready to go, so it's turnkey. As soon as funding's available, we could actually roll that out so we can meet any deadline that we might have to face. So staff is currently working on that. We're identifying locations. We're also identifying costs. And then what infrastructure do we need to bring to those neighborhoods? A lot of that has to do with fiber. So we're identifying where our current fiber is in the city. We need to have a better handle on that. We don't currently. So staff is mapping that out currently so that we can be able to roll a project out like this as soon as funding comes available. And there was funding that was in the second round of the stimulus package that came out for broadband expansion. The state is really looking at a lot of rural areas, obviously, for that. But we think we have a good argument for why we need to make sure we have this available for some of our inner city areas within the city of Auburn.
I was wondering too, if you might speak to the school department when we talk about the areas that are being developed, because they've given out mobile hotspots to students, and if you have that information, it may help them make a decision as far as to where it could go.
Dr. Brown and I meet on a regular basis. We're having those conversations, and so we'll make sure all that's included.
Well, it's been 45 minutes, and that's what we have scheduled. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Boss?
Just one quick question. I was just wondering if for mental health services
Councilor
costs.
Boss, I'm sorry, could you speak in?
Okay.
Yeah, a little bit.
For mental health services costs, are you looking at an increase in that cost for the next fiscal year, or will it be steady?
I don't believe that's an area that we have looked in depth at yet, but it is certainly a very important issue that needs to be looked at and make sure that it is supports, because it again supports the school committee's goals, which is, graduation rates. All of these things play into that. So it's certainly something that is going to need to be looked into.
Thank you. Yeah, I know that we're looking at a deficit, but I do think that spending is needed and warranted there, particularly in what we've seen in the last year. And thank you.
Thank you,
Well,
Councilor Boss, for saying that.
Thank you very much, school committee, for coming in and having this joint meeting. Appreciate it. Looking forward to our next one, which probably will be in April-ish, I think, right before the budget's ratified. So thank you very much. Have a great, great holiday season. Enjoy your weekend, okay? And thank you all for wearing your Christmas sweaters, Chairwoman Matthews and Committeewoman Albert with the hat. Close. What we're going to do right now is I'm going to call a 5-minute recess. Actually, before I do that, next we have an executive session. And it's an executive session pursuant to 1 MRSA Section 405. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion, Councilor McLeod. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second for Councilor Boss. All those in favor? We'll now stand in executive session after a 5-minute break.
I heard part of it. I wasn't completely sure.
Okay.
I think we're going right into executive session.
Thank you for reiterating that. Apparently my mic was not.
I'd like to call to order this meeting of December 21st, 2020. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, thank you all for joining us. So close to Christmas. I'm really excited to see everybody in the Christmas spirit with their Christmas sweaters on and shirts. So if you are wondering, this isn't a normal attire for us, so we'll have a little fun with it right before the holidays. First on the agenda tonight is consent items, and we have 4 of them. I'll entertain a motion at this time.
So moved.
Second.
I've got a motion from Councilor McLeod and a second from Councilor Walker. Show of hands, all those in favor? Opposed? None being? The consent item carries 7-0. We also have the minutes of the November 30th, 2020 Special City Council meeting. Are there any corrections? None being, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the November 30th, 2020 Special City Council meeting.
So moved.
Motion to approve.
Councilor McLeod, second by Councilor Walker. Show of hands, all those in favor? Passes by 7-0. Next, we also have the minutes of the December 7th, 2020 regular City Council meeting. Are there any corrections? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the December 7th, 2020 regular City Council meeting.
So moved.
Second.
I got one from Councilor McLeod, second from Councilor Walker. All those in favor? Opposed? The minutes are accepted by a vote of 7-0. Now we're going to move on to communications, presentations, and recognition. I'd like to turn this over to the city manager at this time for our first communication and presentation of the night.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, ODAS staff. I know we are working through a new system, so appreciate everyone's patience. What we'll do is we'll move to our Zoom, if that's first one that's available. And we have Elise Johansson with us from Safe Voices.
Hello, are you able to hear me?
We can, Elise, thank you.
Okay, great. So I'm assuming the video is not working though, correct?
We can see your picture, but that's all we can see.
Yeah, there's no option for me to show a video. I'm not really quite sure why.
If you want to go ahead and start, and the staff can look to see if they can make that happen for you.
Give her control of
Yeah, let me try.
it. Mr. Hanson, if you would like to start with your presentation prior to the video while we try to work that out on our end, if that works.
Sure. Sure. So I'm Elise Johansson. I'm the executive director of Safe Voices, which is the Domestic Violence Resource Center serving Franklin, Oxford, and Androscoggin counties. And I just wanted to thank you to the town or City of Auburn for the CDBG funds that we've been receiving that help us with our shelter and housing services for local residents. So thank you so much for that continued support. And I wanted to be able to present with you all or share with you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to share with you all that we'll be moving to a new space in downtown Lewiston in the coming months, and we will be embarking on our first ever capital campaign, which will allow us to fully turn our new space into a robust domestic violence resource center. And so you'll be hearing more from us in the coming months, but we are very excited and know that the space will allow people to access us by bus and by foot, and also be able to access advocates and a computer station so they can confidentially check emails, print out evidence that they need for court, and receive in-person advocacy, or also use our space to access virtual advocacy for other service providers. And so I was hoping I would be able to do some share screen today and share what that space would look like, but I can provide maybe some printouts to the council at a later date.
Yeah, and I have to apologize. Obviously, with our new system and trying to work through that, I'm not sure if it's possible. We are doing a last check, though. In the meantime, please feel free to send anything, whether it be a video, any handouts we'll have included in the minutes for the record. We'll also ensure that the council, as well as the public, have access to that. We're very, very encouraged by your work, frankly. And you've been a kind of a presence within this area for some time now, and we definitely appreciate all the work you do. And we appreciate we appreciate the fact that we can actually fund you annually through our community development block grant. Oh, you're there. Maybe I talked long enough to stall to make this work.
It looks like you were able to get me on, so that's wonderful. Do you want me to show the space, or I can still provide that via email at another time?
If you show us a space by email, I think that'd be great. That way we can actually look at it and digest it at our own time, and we can also include it into the record. Was there a video presentation, though, that you had as well?
No.
No? Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to share now that we can actually see you in this, you know?
So no, I just wanted to say that we started surveying the people we were working with right at the beginning of the pandemic. And we heard loud and clear that people were still able to feel fully supported by our advocates, even when we were under a stay-at-home order. And so I just wanted to celebrate the resiliency of survivors and our wonderful staff and our community for just leaning in to the work since March in ways that we've never done before. And so I just wanted to thank you all and your leadership and give a really good big thank you publicly to our community as well.
No, please, I think we can, I think I can speak for the entire council right now when we share that sentiment with you and give our thanks to your staff for working through this. One quick question though. Have you seen, an increase in need of services during COVID-19? And I'm assuming that you've been able to handle that effectively. Is there anything else that we might be able to provide as a municipality to support your efforts?
Just continue to keep us apprised of the ever-changing landscape in our communities. Assist us if we have trouble accessing PPE. Luckily, we have been able to access PPE. And I think that safety net services need to stay comprehensive and accessible with as few hurdles as humanly possible, because survivors have enough in their lives for sure, and access to safety net services are more important now than they ever were.
So thank you very much, Mr. Hanson. We appreciate it, and we appreciate your time and your flexibility in scheduling this as well.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Next on communications, we have a recognition. It's actually Spirit of America. This is something we do annually, so I'm going to turn it over to the manager right now for that.
Mr. Mayor, if we could we move on to recognition, the extra mile, and I'll bring that plaque in for you.
Very good. Then we're going to move, and normally we don't do this at the same meeting, but it's just how everything worked with timing. We're going to do our recognition of Extra Mile Day. Hold on one second while I bring that up. And this is a proclamation. I'd like to read this right now if I could. So, whereas Auburn, Maine is a community which acknowledges that a special vibrancy exists within the entire community when its individual citizens collectively go the extra mile in personal effort, volunteerism, and service. And whereas Auburn is a community which encourages its citizens to maximize their personal contribution to the community by giving of themselves wholeheartedly and with total effort, commitment, and conviction to their individual ambitions, family, friends, and community. And whereas Auburn is a community which chooses to shine a light on and celebrate individuals and organizations within its community who go the extra mile in order to make a difference and lift up fellow members of their community. And whereas the City of Auburn acknowledges the mission of Extra Mile America to create 500 extra mile cities in America, and is proud to proclaim and support Extra Mile Day on December 21st, 2020. Now, therefore, I, Jason Levesque, the mayor of the City of Auburn, do hereby proclaim December 21st, 2020 to be Extra Mile Day. I want to urge each individual in our community to take time on this day to not only go the extra mile in his or her own life, but to also acknowledge all those who are inspirational and their efforts and commitment to make their organizations, family and community, country, or world a better place.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We will be recognizing individuals over the next few meetings that have gone to the extra mile and have really done an outstanding job in our community during different events and activities. Next, we would like to do the Spirit of America recognition. I would ask Liz, if you could, just bring up those that will be receiving that are on the Zoom call.
This is nice. The City of Auburn is honored to celebrate our 2020 Spirit of America tribute to the Auburn Grab and Go feeding program. On behalf of a grateful community, thank you for your generous support of the City of Auburn and the people who live, work, and play here. We rise by lifting others, our Ingersoll. So, good words.
As you know, Mayor and Council, when COVID came onto the scene for our community, we had an immediate response on how will we feed the community. And the Grab and Go feeding program kind of sprung into action. And we had numerous folks that participated in that. And I'm hoping you're going to be able to see their faces here soon on this Zoom call because we've asked many of them to join us. But I would like to take a minute and just read through those that were part of this. And much of the leadership for this initiative was done by Sabrina Best, who is our recreation director, bringing in not just staff. As you know, during this time, we also had much of the City Hall was shut down. We had other staff that were employed with us. We were able to redirect them over to the rec center and make it possible for many of them to assist in ensuring that these Go meals were ready to go. And then we also had several several community members that also participated. Just to date, during the months of March, April, and May alone, the Grab and Go program provided more than 8,000 meals for Auburn residents. The program continues to provide groceries to nearly 150 families each week, more than 350 adults and children, and they continue to make this work every single week as we've transitioned from being at the senior center when the senior center was closed to now our new location of the Grab and Go where they're preparing and presenting, and that is at the Auburn Pal Center. Our city staff included Jennifer Baker, Sabrina Best, Sean Boyd, Zachary Boyd, Jenna Ray Brown, Brandon Chalou, Heath Crocker, Donna Daigle, Scott Daigle, Rick DeShano, Chandra Elliott, Darcy Gardner, Jeremy Gatcomb, Jamie Longley, Melinda Novella, Holly Olivia, and Cy Wilkinson. And then our community volunteers were Pam Hart, Kathy Shaw, Tracy Levesque, and Kimber Varney. So this City of Auburn recognition will be displayed at the Auburn Rec Center, recognizing the true support of these folks who you see now on the screen. Thank you that we're able to get them up. And Sabrina, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
I think the only thing I wanted to add is that you may see our faces, but there were so many in the community that had helped out and pitched out in direct and indirect ways. So this award really goes to the community. It was a team effort. There is no way just the faces you see here were able to do it on their own. So thank you for this. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, no, I'd like to echo what the city manager said, and Sabrina. You all, I had the fortunate pleasure of sacrificing my wife to that program for about 3 months. So I spent some time in there, and just the amazing amount of time and excellence that you all did with little to no background, really, in food preparation, was a testament to Auburn's resiliency. I will say that, Thank you to the City Council, too, for very quickly acting upon this initiative and funding it in the early days of the pandemic. This is a role model of action that other mayors and community leaders throughout the state have talked about and pointed to. So your work has not just brought great relief and comfort to the residents of Auburn in need, it's also brought inspiration to communities far and wide who saw the success of your efforts firsthand. So please join me in thanking everybody that participated. And I do believe you all get a certificate signed by the mayor. That's something that I think Tracy Levesque will definitely love to have hanging up in the house. Thank you all very much, and it's greatly appreciated. Have a great evening, and a happy holiday. Merry Christmas and Hanukkah. Next, presentation of city logos and slogans. We have Liz Allen, our Director of Communications, and Phil Kroll, our City Manager, are going to present on this too.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council, after you've passed the order and then the, I think there was an immediate resolve that was also brought forward, we as staff had an opportunity to talk and look at the language and also take a look at how does that impact what we do on a day in, day out basis. I think I mentioned during the meeting that there may be some challenges with, nice to see Liz joining us. So there might be some challenges with having an order that really we wanted to make sure that we followed what your intent was on the language, but then we wanted to make sure that it was still operational. Liz, are you able to share your screen and bring up the presentation?
I am. Hold on one sec.
What I asked Liz to do was just take a look at all the different things that she really does on a day in, day out basis, the various logos that we currently use. And so what we're going to do is we're going to show you that, the different types of uses of the seal, and then we're also going to show you what we would be proposing for some changes in that language to make sure it's getting, again, to your intent, but also manageable for administration. Liz, go ahead.
Yeah, so good evening. Thanks for letting me join you remotely. I didn't get the ugly sweater memo, but I thought that the antlers would be appropriate. So what you see before you is our glorious city seal. This was established by ordinance, as you know. It's protected by state law. It's deeply important to the people who live here, highly recognizable. Our most important brand, really. This one's used on all our important documents. We use it on at city ceremonies, our podium, anything of, any matter of importance to our city and our municipality. We embrace the seal fully. You can see a few iterations there. I do sometimes play with the color of it, depending on the situation, but the black and white version is the one that we own and we love, and we use the most frequently. This one is what we refer to as our website logo. This was created by the folks who redesigned our website back in 2010. We tend to use this one a bit more casually. We use it on our letterhead, on our business cards, on some of our forms, certainly on social media, because we want to drive conversation and we want to drive traffic and we want to drive people to our website to get as much information as they can, because that is the clearinghouse for everything that we do and the best way for people to get in touch with us as a city. So that's our website logo. Also very familiar. It has our canopies that are highly recognizable from Festival Plaza. And so there's that. So then there are a few departments within the city that have a strong brand of their own. Obviously the police department, the fire department, public works. The police department even has a slogan of expect excellence, a tagline, however you want to phrase that. Also, they embrace honor, excellence, professionalism. Another one is the Auburn Recreation and Sports Tourism Department, and then within that, some of their facilities actually have a brand of their own, including Ingersoll facility and the arena. Then we also have some of our boards, committees, commissions have requested to use a brand of their own to kind of identify their mission and their goals and the work that they do. It includes even the ad hoc recycling and sustainability committee, our incredibly active and successful age-friendly committee, and that age-friendly community committee, sorry. There's a couple here that are pending. I believe the Conservation Commission is still deliberating over a few different drafts, but the LA Railroad Company and the Agriculture Committee gives you a sense of the diverse looks that we have here. Then some other highly recognizable artwork that has come out of the city are event and initiative logos. So these are specific, specialized, promotional collateral that we use to help brand our city events and promote them and draw people in. So our strategic plan, hopefully that one's highly recognizable. Certainly our 150th logo, that was on every mug and t-shirt and hat and coin. And that will endure hopefully for generations and years to come. New Year's Auburn is another one. Our microgrant program, Feeding Auburn, is another one. Art in the Park is another recurring event that we hope is going to endure, and that will be a brand for us as well. Then this doesn't even scratch the surface, but then there's those short-term farmers markets. Well, that's not short-term, hopefully, but you know what I mean. Home for the Holidays, our Riverwalk Brews and Blues Festival, Winterfest. We have Access Auburn, Great Falls Television, Cleaner Greener Auburn, which was renewable energy, powering our city with renewable energy and moving toward that with our first electric vehicle. Our recovery for COVID, our recovery site, Park Watch, that's on signs throughout our parks and public properties throughout the city. So as you can see, there's a ton of public-facing brands that we push out. We also, that extends to our vehicles, brand new, not new van, but new look for our Auburn Recreation bus that just escorted Santa around town the other night. Obviously our cruisers, our fire trucks, our new electric vehicle is there, and a new bucket truck for the arborist crew that will help identify them when they're on the road. I wanted you to know, if you didn't already, that we do have an internal communications policy for staff, and it helps guide usage on things like email and best practices and things like that. It also defines seal and logo usage for staff. It does allow for individual department logos, as you did see there, that are approved by the manager's office, and it reads that only the approved city seal or current logo shall be used on materials produced for distribution. That's anything that goes outside our walls. The only exception is departments and facilities that have their own logo, which has been approved by the city manager's office. So Phil, do you want to jump in here?
Sure. So this is the order that you approved on December 7th. A couple of things that Liz, when she reviewed this, that she wanted to make sure she mentioned is that I think that the only allowable name would be the City of Auburn, and then you had City of Auburn, Maine, and I'm sorry, I think it was just Auburn. And then, so City of Auburn is probably the one that we use more than any of the other variations that you have up there. So Liz is recommending that we include City of Auburn in that. The next piece is regarding no steps backward. It's actually no backward steps is our Latin phrase. So we are making a recommendation to change that so that it is in alignment with what the Latin phrase is on our seal. And then next is when we get to taking a look at what's approved by City Council for use in advertising or marketing initiatives. And then we added this piece, that are expected to last more than a year. The Communications and Community Engagement Department shall continue to create standalone promotional collateral for short-term or recurring city events, programs, and initiatives with oversight from the city manager. And the intent on this, and again, it's keeping with some of your same language if you go on the resolve that you had entered already, or you had added rather, regarding city manager. But it allows for all those things. And I think Liz originally, I think when Brian and I sat down with Liz, we took about 5 or 7 slides off of this presentation of all the other initiatives, promotional activities that she does, and we streamlined it to just those few slides. Because there is a lot that takes place within her department when promoting and advertising the community. So under the order, this is what we're recommending for changes. And then Liz, go ahead to the next Liz, this is just the promotion, correct, that we're going to talk about with the resolve? So here's the language that you had put in for this. Go ahead and go to the next slide, Liz. So on your resolve, we're recommending that where you had by the city and its departments, committees, boards, and commissions, that this actual campaign is really in support of city's economic development efforts. And then we're requesting that you add this because it really breaks these two paragraphs up for the entities. One is that while other city departments, committees, and boards are encouraged to use this slogan if and when applicable, the Communications and Community Outreach Department shall, in consultation with the city manager, implement other slogans as appropriate. And again, this is as it pertains to that resolve and that effort. And that's really the only recommendations that we had. We would, obviously we're doing this in a presentation. If there's something that you feel that we need to change on this, then we'd like to have that feedback, but we would like to bring this back before you on the January 4th meeting for some revisions. Again, we really believe that most of this, what we're requesting, still does the intent of protecting our materials from outside and freeing up some of the work that staff does on a regular day in, day out basis.
If I could, I mean, this is communications, but it can be also somewhat like a workshop. I mean, any debate and everything, I think we all need time to digest it. I will say that you captured the intent well on this, thank you. There are a lot of things, and when we talked about this, one of the things we did discuss was this is just the first step, knowing that it was going to have to be revised in the future. I think there's some language I think that we all need to talk about during the order when it's brought up on January 4th, and looking at the pros and cons of everything. And that's my first pass at this, being the first time I saw your proposed language changes. Is there any other questions or comments on this without getting into a debate on the pros and cons?
Are there any plans to look at all of these logos that have been created and try and create some consistency, whether it's a color that is used? I think of the Auburn Rec as being red, white, and blue, and everything else seems to be sort of greenish, and even a color scheme to make them hang together.
Yeah, so great question. I think Liz and us, we've been having a conversation regarding branding. And that's really, we want to make sure that when people see it, they know exactly that that's the City of Auburn. So we will be working on branding. That'll be coming before you. And that will be something that, as a council, because of this order, you would have to vote to support that as we move forward. But that will be coming. Challenge we have is when it comes to, there's a difference between a patch, so Auburn Fire Department's patch has been around probably since they started. That patch, and it was really I think over the years somebody put a patch on a copier and took a photo of it, and that's what it was. And then I think Karen, when she went over to the fire department, actually created the actual logo that you now see. There's some of that will be hard to change because of tradition, but there are a lot of what we're doing that I would like any kind of promotional to look at and say, oh, I know that's Auburn, and that's what we're hoping to do with the branding.
Very good.
And I would just add that for you all to remember that we do have a communications plan coming down the pike too. So that will include a style guide and usage, and I'd even like to go as far as what fonts are approved and that kind of thing. So we're definitely working on it.
Good. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate the update. We look forward to talking about this a little bit further on the 4th. Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Allen. I love your antlers. That's Snapchat. That's not real, is it?
Merry Christmas.
Are those real or are those Snapchat?
No, those are real.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, moving along. Communications. Okay, so I had included in your packets communications from the Mercatus Center at George Mason University. I also sent this to the council as well as the Comp Plan Review Committee and city staff. I just want to talk briefly about it. It's about 7 pages. I'm not going to go into detail. Everybody can look at it and digest it at their own pace. I engaged George Mason University and specifically their Makata Center, which specializes in zoning ordinance reviews and recommendations to municipalities, county, and state governments around the country. They were a referral from the National League of Cities. I reached out to them, had a great conversation, told them about some of our 3 overarching goals, which were equity, growth, and sustainability, or vitality, if you would. I gave them access to Auburn, everything that anybody else would have access to, namely our GIS as well as Google Earth. And I said, okay, we're in the middle of looking at our zoning and ordinance, go for it and give us some ideas and thoughts. They did. It took them about 2.5, 3 weeks. Ironically, Dr. Salem Firth, who headed this up and provided and authored the executive summary, is from Eastport, Maine, with an aunt that lives in Monmouth. So he has a little bit of a working knowledge of Maine, which I thought was pretty important. A couple highlights there that I think are worth the council focusing in on is really they took a different definition, different approach, if you would, to categorizing and defining what we have, namely the private market, people who want privacy in large lots, rural feel versus a walkability market, those who want in-town, sidewalk, city services closer at hand. Just something to think about when we're going through ordinances and regulations. Also highly recommended in multiple spots the fact that we have way too much parking, and they were adamant about the recommendation to eliminate all parking mandates within the city, i.e. requiring certain amounts of space per square footage for retail organizations, which will promote infill. It's been used around the country. It's a positive. Talked to the city manager about this, and the assistant city manager will be reviewing some of that in January and February as a council. As we like to say, if Target's coming to Auburn, I bet they have more experience in what they need for parking than we do. So we'll let them be the experts on that. From parking lots to really looking at sidewalks, interconnectivity, and how do we infill primarily with lot size, shrink the lot size. We have some ordinances right now tonight on our agenda that will discuss that even further. Shrink the setbacks, front, sides, to really promote community, to promote connectivity, and to maximize the value of our infill downtown lots. They also had some really good ideas about how to find a strike a balance in our agricultural and rural areas of the city, where they can promote a overlay, a form-based code, if you would, to keep that look and feel, but also promote some sort of growth with connectivity. I found interesting. One thing I did find interesting, though, and I talked about it with city manager and assistant city manager today, was the fact that they threw out the fact that there might be some unconstitutionality under the taking clause of the U.S. Constitution with our ag zone the way it's set up today. So I've asked the city manager and assistant city manager to get independent legal review through MMA or any other sources possible to potentially avoid any negative legal liability that the city may have due to this ordinance. So look at it. It's interesting. I think Councilor McLeod, Councilor Boss were at our comp plan review meeting the other day, which we talked about it. It seemed to be quite well received and by all. Did you have anything to add to it since we talked about this? Councilor Boss, Councilor McLeod? No? Everybody look at it, and it's, I think, a really good document. Now, the cost in this was zero. It was free. They can't take money. They're an educational institution. This is part of what they do. So if we want to engage them further as a city, we can do that. It'll probably come from the comp plan review board or the planning board itself, and we'll look at that, but they can't be engaged for a fee, only to cover expenses if that's something we look at. I'm also looking at some other institutions right now to provide similar executive summaries on different specific areas, i.e. recreation, river access, and some other growth and opportunities in zoning too. So that's communication on that one.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
This is such an interesting document, and I did have time to sit with it. Will we, as a council, dig into it more, or will we wait to hear recommendations, say, from the comp plan folks?
It's kind of twofold, really threefold, because it's a public document. I can foresee many groups and committees looking at this and taking some guidance from it that is specific to their charges. Planning board, comp plan review, most definitely. Conservation, ag committee, absolutely should. As a council, I don't think we're going to get into it too depth. It'll be a case by case, and I think it's more informative than anything. It's not going to be the holy writ. We don't have to debate it and say, okay, we're going to accept it or not accept it. It's there, it's information.
And one last question. One of the things I think was interesting is how they define equity. And if you haven't read it, I think it's interesting, and it can inform the rest of our conversations around equity, which really widens the way we talk about it in a really interesting, compelling way.
Yeah, and that's something that was directed from the council too. We've talked about equity as a thought process litmus test, if you would. I'm not sure if that's appropriate, but looking at how we conduct our work, how our zoning and regulations are equitable or non-equitable. You know, by definition, any type of zoning is unequitable, but how do we make it more equitable? So I think it's just something that I always talk about and keep in the back of our mind. So, very good. Any other questions, comments? No? I want to move on then. Next, we have communications from the Honorable Richard Trafton, who is a former mayor of the City of Auburn. After many years of service on the Lewiston Auburn Railroad Corporation, Mr. Trafton will be retiring or stepping down from that position. He has done yeoman's work in really changing the LA Railroad Corporation, which is an independent corporation that we appoint board members to. It's percentage owned. It's actually 65% owned by the City of Lewiston, 35% owned, roughly, by the City of Auburn. We have 3 seats on that board in order of percentage representation. It is a company. The company owns assets. The company makes money. The company has not distributed money. The company does want to distribute money for the purpose of economic development and marketing in order to hopefully increase the usage of their assets, i.e. railroad tracks and depots. The vast majority of all their revenue-generating assets are in the City of Auburn. So we're going to have to look at, Mr. Trafton is the chair of that right now, so we're going to have to look at restructuring that. Mr. Trafton did give me an idea when I spoke with him a couple weeks ago. He said, I got into it because I was the mayor, and it was a good place to be because it's a joint corporation with Lewiston, and it might make sense to help advocate for the City of Auburn's needs within that corporation so we can start distributing that money to the cities, because that's where if distributions happen, they happen to the municipalities. So something to think about. When I fully form that plan and thought, I will definitely propose it to the council in the January 4th meeting, but I wanted to give you a heads up. I also wanted to let you know that it is official. You know, Mayor Trafton, one of his final acts as the chair of the committee was to secure Auburn's ownership of Bonnie Park. That was, Councilor Walker, Councilor Gary probably know more than all of us, decades and decades in the work where actually Lewiston, or the corporation rather, owned that park and we did not. So that is fully in Auburn. The deed has been transferred. Everything's good there. Correct, Joe? I've got a copy of it, so it is. So, yeah, Jill, you know everything about land ownership. So we're good there. I just want to make sure everybody understood that one. So moving on to council communication. I have one thing that I'll turn over to individual councilors. January 18th, Martin Luther King Jr. Day, also a city council meeting day. On January 4th, I'll propose an order for your consideration, moving our meeting from January 18th to January 19th, which is the Tuesday directly after Martin Luther King Jr. Day. We've done it once before. We'll be doing this every time there's a Monday holiday that also falls under a city council meeting day. But I just wanted to give you appropriate heads up so you could plan your calendar ahead of that, if it does pass. Okay? So I'll start over here to the left. Councilor Boss, communications, and then just work our way around if you have any.
Nothing at this time, thank you.
Councilor Lasagna.
I just want to say, if you get a chance, you should drive around at night and look at the lights in this community. People have really outdone themselves. It's well worth taking a trip. Just on Denison, there are fantastic lights there. Lake Street, I'm sure a number of you know where they are, but it's well worth taking a trip.
On that note, we have a website, the City of Auburn. If you go to the City of Auburn, the hub is located for our, Phil, help me. I'm trying to blank.
Home for the Holidays campaign.
Home for the Holidays campaign, which residents in Auburn signed up for through the Recreation Department, and they actually receive lights, extension cords, and they are mapped out, so you have a driving route throughout the City of Auburn to see some wonderful lights. So, yes, thank you for putting that out. And that was a lot of work done by Liz, Sabrina, and the rest of the team, so thank you very much for that. Nothing. Councilor Gary?
Other than, I'd like to wish everybody a happy holiday and a Merry Christmas. We've gone through a lot, and I know the meaning of Christmas isn't the presents, it's the people and the community and all the well wishes. It's been suggested that if we can try trying to have our Zoom meetings or phone calls to try to bring the spirit that, of those that can't be with us at the time, that we all get together, that we can all share the spirit.
Councilor Milks?
Nothing at this time.
Councilor Walker?
Yes, we have some beautiful poinsettias here that were donated to us. And anybody that wants one, or if there's more than one left at the end here, you're welcome to take them home. Mike Small, which owns the Mike Small Greenhouse on Summer Street, wanted to give you a little cheer there for the holidays. There's pink, red, and one white one, so you can all fight over the white one. But no, he wanted you to take and enjoy yourself with these. And don't forget to give them a little water, though, because they've been sitting here waiting since Friday for the meeting tonight to give them away. So they're for all of us, so don't be afraid to take one or two of them and enjoy yourself. And last thing I want to say, we have the special meal for the holidays. You only have one more day to call in and order that. We're at approximately 200 call-in meals right now. So tomorrow's your last day, so if you want to take advantage of the age-friendly special meal for people, please call the Recreation Department tomorrow and order it. Thank you.
That's Mike Small's greenhouse, correct? Mike Small's greenhouse on Summer Street in Auburn?
On Summer Street in Auburn, yes.
There we go. No, thank you very much for helping out with that, Leroy. Councilor Carrier?
No communications at this point.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I'm going to open this up to our first open session of the night. Members of the public are invited to speak to the council about any issue directly related to city business which is not on this agenda. Members who would like to speak may do so by stepping up to the podium in the community room, or for those joining us on Zoom, please use the raise hand function. I do have Mr. Pelletier is in the community room for open session. I'd like to turn it over to the community room at this time. Oh, there we go.
And City Manager and Assistant City Manager. My name is Larry Pelletier. I live on 2nd Street. And this evening I'd like to address the sidewalks, primarily in New Auburn. My family has lived on 2nd Street since 1982. So I think I have a little bit of insight on that neighborhood. So I'd just like to give you a snapshot of what's going on with our sidewalks in that area. From 2nd and 3rd Streets, as an example, 2nd Street to 3rd Street, there's a concrete sidewalk, non-plowable on both sides. 4th Street to Gill Street, not too bad on the right side, but on the left, it doesn't exist. There's no sidewalk there. A lot of streets in the New Auburn area, portions of the streets have no sidewalk. Some have partial sidewalks on one side or the other. Example would be Barton Street, which connects 5th Street to 6th Street. Mary Carroll at Walton, sidewalk on the right. Sidewalk from 5th to 7th. No sidewalks. On either side from 5th to 3rd, there are no sidewalks. 3rd Street from Gill to Brook. On the right side, there's a sidewalk from Gill to Brook Street. On the left side, going up the street towards Mary Carroll, there's no sidewalk. Brook Street to Riverside Drive, sidewalk on the right, not plowed in the wintertime. No sidewalk on the left side down to Riverside. And that street, if you're not familiar with it, is very steep. 3rd to Brook Street is 3rd Street and Brook Street are to be addressed next year in 2021. So There's a lot, I also sit on the Complete Streets Committee, and we're going to do a lot of good work there, but it's been needed for a long period of time. And that means that what we deal with on the Complete Streets Committee is walkability and connectivity. And that means safely being able to go from point A to point B. Being able to walk any of our streets at any time of the day, in particular at night, is very challenging on some of these streets. And if I was blind, I wouldn't be able to walk on the sidewalks. Some of them are the old streets are concrete, and they're not level. So you've got to watch out. And Third and Brook Street, as I say, are going to be addressed. In this time of the year, it's a challenge, especially on the sidewalks and some of the streets too. When you don't have a sidewalk to walk on, you've got to. This particular year, there's a lot of people, including myself, that walk their dogs. On any given day or night, you'll run into 3 or 4 folks on the sidewalks or on the roads trying to traverse. So it can be a challenge. I believe we can do a better job when we need to. This present storm we just had. I went out today and shoveled a couple of places where the sidewalk ply would go through, but you come to a crosswalk and there's depending on the size of the storm, you can't get through there. A good example is where we have a problem every year is on the corner of Mill Street and Broad Street. There's a laundromat right there with a sign crossing. You push the button and go across, but if it's blocked, you can't go across. For myself, I find a way to get around it, but some folks wouldn't be able to do it.
Mr. Pelletier?
Yes.
I know, I'm over here in the other room. It would scare me too. I just wanted to say thank you very much for that. If you have any others, just for the 3-minute maximum time allotment, if you could put it down, or if you have notes, if you could give it or leave it. And I want to make sure that Councilor Walker, our at-large councilors, and city staff have this list. Definitely, I've just driven by New Auburn a little bit lately, and there needs to be some work done there.
Okay.
So we would really, really appreciate that. And I guess for anybody else too that has some good levied and level opinions on how to make our streets more walkable and safer.
All right. I'm the only public, but okay.
Well, I understand that. I'm still trying to find out if there's anyone else on Zoom too, sir.
Okay. I'm sorry. I forgot
that's
about
okay.
that. So, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody, Liz? Is there anybody on Zoom right now for public comment? I'm going to take that as a no. Okay, we're going to move on to unfinished business. We have ordinance 08-1102220. It's a public hearing, second reading. I'll entertain a motion at this time.
So moved.
Second.
I got a motion for Councilor McLeod, second for Councilor Walker. Open this up to the public, as it is a public hearing. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak? If so, please step up to the podium. I don't believe there's anyone in there. But if you're in the community room, or use the raise hand feature on your screen if you're joining us via Zoom. Liz, is there anybody that would like to comment online? Okay, seeing none. I'm sorry?
We don't have anyone, no.
Okay, very good. Seeing none, I'm going to bring back to the council. Is there any debate? Any conversation on this?
Mr.
Councilor
Mayor,
Lozano?
is it possible to do 1 or 2 sentences of what this ordinance is about?
Yeah, this year basically adopted the proposed amendments to Chapter 14, Article 18, Adult Use of Medical Marijuana Business, Section 14-656, Section 14-658, and Section 14-659 of the ordinances of the City of Auburn, governing at-home businesses with regards to recreation marijuana. It's the second reading. Any other debate? No? I'm going to ask for a vote at this time, and I'll ask for a roll call vote if possible, Sue.
Counselor Carrier?
Yes.
Counselor Walker?
Yes.
Counselor Boss?
Yes.
Counselor Gary?
Yes.
Counselor Lasagna?
Yes.
Counselor McLeod?
Yes.
Counselor Milks?
Yes.
The order passes by a vote of 7-0. Next, we have Order 12-1207-2020. It's adopting a zoning map change to expand the T-41 traditional Main Street neighborhood. This is a public hearing and a second reading.
You skipped one.
No. 4.2 I skipped because I thought they were sequential. I'm sorry, I apologize. Next is, we have ordinance, hold on one second. 09, adopting the proposed amendments to Chapter 60, Article 9. This is Ordinance 09-1102-2020. It's a public hearing and second reading. This is in regards to home occupation regulations, Section 60-7738 of the ordinances of the city. Again, public hearing and second reading. I'll entertain a motion at this time.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second for Councilor Boss. Open this up to the public. Do we have anybody in the public that would like to speak? If so, please step up to the podium if you're in the community room, or use the raise hand feature on screen if you're joining via Zoom. Right now, we don't have anyone joining via Zoom. So is there anyone in the community room? I don't see any, so we're going to move on. Bring it back to the council. Council, is there any discussion on this?
Mr. Mayor, I was the second on that.
Oh, you were? I'm sorry.
No problem.
For the record, stand corrected that was Councilor Lasagna as a second. I'm going to ask for a roll call vote at this time.
Counselor Carrier?
Yes.
Counselor Walker?
Yes.
Counselor Boss?
Yes.
Counselor Gary?
No.
Counselor Lasagna?
Yes.
Counselor McLeod?
Yes.
Counselor Milks?
Yes.
The order passes by a vote of 6-1. Excuse me. Next, we have ordinance 11-1207-2020. It's adopting a zoning map change to expand the T-4.2 traditional downtown neighborhood to the downtown enterprise district. This is a public hearing and a second reading. I'll entertain a motion at this time.
So moved.
Second.
Motion from Councilor McLeod, second from Councilor Milks. I'm going to open this up to the public. If there's any members of the public that would like to speak, please step up to the podium now if you're in the community room. If you're watching via Zoom, please use the raise hand feature.
That so that if they wanted to make improvements to their place, they were afraid that they were going to get on the hook for the improvements if we would take it, and they wouldn't have the money to pay off what they had borrowed from the bank to fix their properties. So I try to explain to them this is totally different, that it's not the ADEPT plan. This is a new way to improve the city, to increase businesses and to beautify the city.
It's truly that, and for predictability and regulatory predictability, to be specific, with anybody, whether someone's a homeowner, wants to build a home, buy a home, or start a business, this gives them a nice set, understandable set of ordinances that keep the character of our existing neighborhoods. Any other questions or comments? Councilor Walker?
Not good.
I'm sorry, you.
This also brings into some homes down in that area into code compliance. If something were to happen to their homes, I believe they would be able to then rebuild the current structure, compared to if it burned down now, they would have to comply to our current ordinance if this doesn't pass.
Councilor Walker?
Yeah, there's been quite a lot of questions asked about this, and Eric Cousins has taken a lot of them. He wouldn't mind coming in here if he's here, would he, and telling us a few of the insight that he may know that may...
So Eric's at the podium. Go ahead, Eric. I know you did field quite a few calls.
Yes, Councilor Walker, we had very few calls for the neighborhood that we're talking about tonight, the change from downtown enterprise to T42. We've since sent the notice out for the change in New Auburn, and we've had a lot of calls from New Auburn. We did field a few calls in this area. I think the biggest difference that people will notice, general property owners will notice rather than a larger developer, is that the front setback gets reduced from 25 feet to as little as 5 or 10 feet. And most of the homes in that neighborhood already are built closer to the street than the 25 feet, so that would allow for the reconstruction or new construction of a home to be closer to the street than what the current zoning allows. It does not mandate anybody to make any physical improvements to their home unless they choose to renovate or add an addition.
Thank you.
And just as another point, this actually was talked about in the Mercatus study about decreasing setbacks front and side and preserving character of neighborhoods. So, you know, a lot of the stuff that they talked about we're actually already doing. So thank you, Mr. Cousins and the rest of the staff.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? We're good? Sue, for a roll call vote at this time?
Counselor Carrier?
Yes.
Counselor Walker?
Yes.
Counselor Boss?
Yes.
Counselor Gary?
Yes.
Counselor Lasagna?
Yes.
Counselor McLeod?
Yes.
Counselor Milks?
Yes.
Order passes by a vote of 7-0. That's order 11, correct, Sue? Clerk?
I'm sorry?
That was order 11, correct?
That was 11, yes.
Okay, 12. Okay. Now, next we have ordinance 12-120722020, which is adopting a zoning map change to expand the T4.1 traditional Main Street neighborhood. This is a public hearing and a second reading. Entertain a motion at this time.
So moved.
Second.
Second from Councilor Boss. I'll open this up to the public. Are there any members of the public in the community room that would like to speak on this topic? Or if you are on Zoom, please use the raise hand icon. I've got no one in the community room.
No one on Zoom, Mr. Mayor.
Very good then. Bring it back to the council. Council, any discussion on this? Negative? Okay. Sue, I have a roll call vote, please.
Counselor Carrier?
Yes.
Counselor Walker?
Yes.
Counselor Boss?
Yes.
Counselor Gary?
Yes.
Counselor Lasagna?
Yes.
Counselor McLeod?
Yes.
Counselor Milks?
Yes.
Order passes by a vote of 7-0. We're going to be moving on to new business at this time. We have order 135-122122020, approving the liquor license for Chipotle located on Center Street in Auburn. I'll entertain a motion.
So
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion, Councilor Walker, second from Councilor McLeod. I'll open this up to the public. Is there any member of the public that has not eaten at Chipotle yet in Auburn? No. That would like to speak about this order? There's nobody in the community room. Liz, is there anybody via Zoom? If so, please use the raise hand icon.
No, Mr. Mayor, no one via Zoom.
I'm going to bring this back to the council. Any conversation on Chipotle?
Just, Mr. Mayor, with what we saw in terms of the opening day, and I know it was extraordinary, is the parking adequate when it actually opens for dining?
Yeah, I mean, that was, Phil, do you want to give us the stats on that?
So, yeah, I think Eric is in the other room when I asked him to come to the podium regarding will it meet the standard, and it did go through the permitting process, and so their parking spaces did meet that. Obviously, there's a challenge when opening like this, and we've talked a little bit about how can we maybe communicate soft openings and try to work with businesses that we're going to see this type of response in the community. And I think, Eric, you said they may have broken probably about, what, 2 or 3 records?
We were told that they broke the Northeast region records for sales at least 2 days in a row, possibly 3.
So they were very busy. I think they did, the management and the regional manager of the Chipotle did a great job communicating with staff here, working with PD and with code enforcement, just to do their best to try to manage traffic. They hired additional officers, so those in the public who saw officers out there, they were being paid for by Chipotle to ensure we had good, proper safety during those peak hours. And Eric, how about the moving forward with parking?
So we did review the site originally as a Krispy Kreme location. It does meet the minimum standards for parking and for stacking for the drive-through. We certainly didn't anticipate the level of vehicular traffic that was there over the last week. It seems to have settled down today, and I think as things get back to normal, we shouldn't have an issue with vehicles backing into the street. If we do continue to have any issues like that, then I think we really need to take a look at our standards and see where it makes sense to adjust those. But they do meet the standard for stacking of vehicles and for parking for restaurants.
And I will say one of the beauties about getting rid of parking requirements completely citywide, which most cities in the country are doing, is the fact that these things do happen. It's the best interest of the business to properly plan through history and experience what they need versus us planning parking for the once in a lifetime or once a 1 weekend a year event. I think this is an amazing, I gotta say, I ate there Saturday, talked to staff. They were stressed but happy. People were happy, calm and polite. I've never seen someone wait in line for 45 minutes, multiple people, calm, polite, smiling, socially distanced, waiting. This is a great thing. I honestly think that we need to be talking about this event, that opening weekend, and those records set to anybody and everybody that wants to listen as a testament to the really devotion that the Auburn consumer has and the regional consumer for partaking and really visiting local businesses. So, and I'm pretty excited about that. And the food is good, it's great. The chips were warm, the salsa was phenomenal. So, is there any other comment about their liquor license? They do have Mexican Coca-Cola, which is phenomenal. Nothing on the liquor license. Very good. I'm going to ask for a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? None being? Passes the vote 6-0. Okay. Next, we have Order 136-122-12020, approving the CDBG CV amendment to the fiscal year 2019 annual action plan. At this point, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
A motion from Councilor McLeod, second from Councilor Geary. I'm going to open this up to the public. If there are any members of the public that are in the community room, please go to the podium at this time. If there's anybody watching remotely via Zoom, please use the raise hand feature. If you have no one at the podium, is there anybody at home via Zoom?
No one on Zoom, sir.
Okay. I'm going to ask for a roll call vote at this time, Sue.
A roll call. Counselor Carrier.
Yes.
Counselor Walker.
Yes.
Counselor Boss.
Yes.
Counselor Gary.
Yes.
Counselor Lasagna.
Yes.
Counselor McLeod.
Yes.
Counselor Milks.
Yes.
The order passes by a vote of 7-0. Next, we have Order 137-122-12020, which is approving the tax increment financing District 25, which is Future Guard 101 Merrill Road. I'll entertain a motion at this time.
So moved.
Councilor McLeod, second by Councilor Carrier. I'm going to open this up to the public. If there's any members of the public that would like to comment on this, please go to the podium if you're in the community room, or use the raise hand feature on your screen if you're joining us via Zoom. Currently, there's no one at the podium. Is there anyone logged in remotely via Zoom? Negative. I'll bring this back to the council. Any discussion? None being, I'm going to ask you for a roll call vote.
Counselor Carrier.
Yes.
Counselor Walker.
Yes.
Counselor Boss.
Yes.
Counselor Gary.
Yes.
Counselor Lasagna.
Yes.
Counselor McLeod.
Yes.
Counselor Milks.
Yes.
The order passes by a vote of 7-0. Next, we have Order 139-122-12020. It's an order conducting all city council meetings remotely.
Point of order. I think we skipped Order 138.
Oh, gee, God. I'm going to have to color code this better. My apologies, folks. Next, we have Order 138-122-12020, authorizing the waiver of all building permit fees for the new Edward Little High School building. I'll entertain a motion at this time.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilor McLeod, second by Councilor Carrier. I'll open this up to the public for comment. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak on this? Please go to the podium in the community room, if so. If there's anybody at home, please use the raise hand function on Zoom. Nobody in the podium? Nobody at home?
No one here, Mr. Mayor.
I'll bring this back. Very good, we're clear. Bring this back to the council for discussion. I'm going to turn over to Mr. Manager because you have the briefing, but this is something we talked about several years ago, actually.
So this was in discussion, as the mayor said, for some time. I think when Peter was city manager, he was having these conversations with Katie Grondin through the process. I think there was some discussions about whether or not there should be at least a reduced amount of 50% for the building fees. What I proposed when this came and the school department had requested this was that we would actually bill the school department for the full amount, so the full amount would be documented, that the school board would take steps on whether or not they want to request the city council to waive these fees. They did that at their last meeting. You have it in your packet. Eric, is it $92,000?
Yeah, just shy of $100,000, 95-ish.
So you have that in your packet as far as information, and that would be up to the council to determine if you'd like to waive these. And Eric, we've had conversations about this. So obviously, we, in the planning department, they look to fees to offset costs to the public. Eric, if you want to share a little bit about the amount of time that will probably take for your staff for this.
We're anticipating that there's a number of weeks, maybe 3 to 4 or 5 weeks worth of staff time that would go into a project this size. It's a huge permit fee. We certainly can't justify the permit cost as just covering our cost. It's also the most expensive project and largest construction project that I believe we've ever permitted. We've never permitted, to my knowledge, a $125 million project. So we do anticipate that it'll take a fairly significant amount of staff time during that construction, plus the time of the fire inspector and electrical inspector. But we were suggesting a reduced permit fee because it's really, the permit fee is much larger than what the resources it will demand. We do typically charge even our own department permit fees when the funding is coming from outside of the city's general fund. We do that because there is a real cost to implementing the permit, and it makes sense to cover that cost with a funding source that's not the general taxpayer. When it is a purely locally funded project, it doesn't make a lot of sense to go through the accounting exercise of moving local tax dollars from one account into our permitting account. That becomes part of the general fund anyways. So we have waived fees when it's a purely locally funded project. We believe that this one was going to be funded in part by the state. It sounds like that may not be the case, so that's why we're here.
So the challenge with this is that if you were to transfer this to the state has a certain amount of money that they're going to be providing to a local community. So you could say, let's go ahead and transfer this to the state and have the state pay for it. That means local dollars would then need to be raised to fund that difference. And so no matter how you look at this, this is ultimately coming out of local funds. As the way the building program currently is presented and the way that it's moving forward, because of the total amount has already been set. So it's completely up to the council how you would like to look at doing this. This would mean that if you don't waive any, this would be coming out of your capital, which means that you will be paying, ultimately you'll be paying interest on money that would just be coming back into the city, irregardless. So, it's something that we should probably look at. Eric, you did look at Park Avenue School, and that was probably our most recent project like this.
Yeah, we waived the fees for the addition at the Park Avenue School. I couldn't check on the original construction because we just didn't have that record.
Just wasn't, we weren't using the same software system at the time, so, but the original fees were waived for that project. So this is completely up to council on how you like to proceed, but again, it could cost more depending on what you determine tonight.
Eric, did you say that you would recommend a reduced cost, or do you have a recommendation?
Well, if the permit fees are purely coming from locally raised funds, and especially where you have to borrow those funds to pay interest, it makes sense to waive the fee, and we'll just, you're budgeting for staff time in the office, and hopefully we'll just recognize that that's part of the workload for this period of time. I don't think it makes sense for the city to borrow money to pay a permit fee and pay it back with interest over 10 or 20 years. So waiving the fee makes sense as long as this is a locally funded cost.
Is there any other comments? Councilor?
Councilor McLeod, you can also weigh in on this if I'm incorrect, but I believe that by waiving the fee, it also demonstrates to the Department of Education our commitment to this building and this project.
I think we pretty much already committed already. So I don't, if anyone doubts our commitment to this high school, I got to bridge this up.
I have to make a comment, though. We have a heck of a lot of people that want to build in this city and do build in this city. We don't get these fees waived for any of us, so I don't think they're any better than a business person coming into our city trying to help this city grow. Then this whole thing is costing this city one heck of a lot of money, and for them to bid.
2020, conducting all city council meetings, or requiring conducting all city council meetings remotely until further notice. I'll entertain a motion at this time.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilor McLeod, a second by Councilor Boss. I'm going to open this up to the public for comment. Is there any members of the public in the community room who would like to speak? If so, please step up to the podium at this time. While we wait, if there's anybody remotely joining via Zoom, please use the raise hand icon. I don't see anyone in the community room at this time. Do I see anyone in Zoom?
No, sir.
No, that's a negative. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to bring this back to the council. Is there any debate?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Point of order, is it appropriate for those who are bringing forward the order to speak first? I believe that's what we've done in the past.
Well, absolutely. But Councilor Gary said something, so I'm going to let her finish.
I would like to move to table this to a date certain.
I have a motion to table this to a date certain. Councilor Gary, do you have a date certain or a date uncertain?
A date uncertain.
Date uncertain. I have a motion from Councilor Gary to table this order to a date uncertain. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilor Carrier. When you have a motion to table, Sue, correct me if I'm wrong, that ceases debate on the topic, according to Robert's rules?
Point of order, a date uncertain, are you saying indefinitely?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay. So according to Robert's rules, when you make a motion to table something at second, the debate ends. I'm going to now call for a vote. Sue, can you call for a roll call vote, please?
Councilor Carrier,
This is a vote to table?
it's
Yes.
the vote to table.
Yes.
Councilor Walker,
Yes.
Councilor Boss,
No.
Councilor Gary,
Yes.
Councilor Lasagna,
No.
Councilor McLeod,
No.
Councilor Milks,
Yes.
The order is now tabled for a date uncertain. I'm going to open this up to the second open session of the night. Any members of the public who are invited to speak to the council about any issue directly related to city business, which is not on this agenda.
No.
Members that would like to speak, please come up to the podium, and if you could limit your comments to about 3 minutes. Mr. Pelletier, thank you.
Yes,
and
thank
if you're on Zoom, please use a raise hand icon.
Thank you. I'll continue on speaking about the streets for a brief moment. 3rd Street to Roque. On the left side, it's like riding a roller coaster. Every time you get to a driveway, there's a sudden dip. This morning I went up there and the sidewalk had been plowed, but you could see where the sidewalk plow would bottom out. There's a large rivet there, and there's still 3 to 6 inches of snow in there, so it's hard to traverse on that. The Great Fire of '33, I'm sure, has quite a bit to do with the way the sidewalks in that neighborhood are kind of fragmented. The fire began in the old Pomeranian Hardware, worked its way through the city there, and went wherever it wanted to. So some buildings survived, some didn't, and I think it's over the years. It kind of shattered things, and so that's a period of 87 years. So over that 87 years, I think we could have done. Not pointing any fingers to anybody. A lot of people involved in this, but we could have done a better job in addressing these things 87 years ago, so we wouldn't have to spend as much money to get them back up to where they should be. And the last thing I'd like to talk about, I sit on the Citizens Advisory Committee, and we just, not too long ago, put a badly needed raised sidewalk there. When folks come in down Main Street, across the lights, and turn right, it's a little bit of a corner there, and a lot of people, they're really moving. So kids come out of there at night, and they're anxious to go home, and they fly. More than one time, my wife and I have nearly, struck a child. I wouldn't want anybody to do that. So it looks really nice. I just wanted to thank everybody that was involved in that, the staff, in the different departments. It was quite an endeavor. They had put new catch basins on both sides, and they did a really, really good job. And having said that, the sidewalk directly across the Boys and Girls Club entrance, where the sidewalk is right there, it goes right into the Boys and Girls Club. That sidewalk across the street is not, I don't think it's up to code, so that it will have to be right. And right now, it's that when the snow plow snow up against it, you can't get across it. You got to walk down the street, in the street to get over the mill. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pelletier. Appreciate it.
Mr. Mayor, point of order. Isn't it where those who present an order should be able to speak first in discussion about it?
Sorry, but you're out of order at this time, and that's actually mayor's discretion. There is no rule saying that you have to or are allowed to make that comment. Or excuse me, speak first.
Well, I think it was inappropriate.
I'm sorry, Councilor Zania, we're on to public comment now. There's no one on Zoom right now to comment. Is there anybody else in the community room at this time?
I'd like to make a comment where Larry's talking about downtown New Auburn. If it's possible, I'd like Public Works Director next year to go down in that area and take a notepad with him and write some things down that he can come back here and at least make some statements to us what it's going to take to fix some of them sidewalks. We were promised 2nd Street would be taken care of 3 years ago. Our director we have at Public Works right now walked that street with myself, with Larry, and some other people, and said we will at least try to get one side looked at, taken care of. There has been nothing done for the last 4 years, not one thing. And he mentioned they don't plow the sidewalk. That's a sidewalk that should be plowed. Larry walks that sidewalk every day of the week, morning, noon, and night. There's other people that walk it. Why they stopped plowing it, I have no idea. But from Gill on, it just isn't being taken care of now. If it's because they got new people, don't know, maybe that's a mistake. But things like that need to be taken care of when you've got elderly people walking up and down them streets, especially with very few lights at nighttime in them streets. And after 4 o'clock, that's not really what we call nighttime, but because of the time change, puts people in the darkness very early in the evening when they go out to walk and enjoy themselves. So I would hope that we can at least give somebody some direction so they can come back here and explain to the council what it's going to take to fix these things, how much money, and where are they spending the money to do sidewalks in this city so that we get an idea.
I'm just going to turn over to Mr. Manager again. I don't want to make this into a workshop, but addressing what Mr. Pelletier said is important.
Yes, and so I've already emailed Mr. Pelletier for that list that he just provided us so that I could follow up with the Public Works Director. We'll take a look at that, and we'll look at the plowing routes for New Auburn sidewalks and see what's included, what's not, and why some may not be done. We'll also be getting a CIP update at your next meeting. We'll have a discussion at that meeting as it pertains to capital projects, which would have included sidewalks. So I'm hoping, Council Walker, we can get that information to you sooner than later.
Very good. Since there's no one else for public comment, I'd like to close the second and last public comment of the night. Or open session, excuse me. We're going to move on to reports. First, in my report, Mayor's report, really just two things. As far as the Comp Plan Review Committee, which I'm on, we did meet on the other night, actually last Thursday night. We talked about breaking into our groups, our work groups, starting to meet, work on specific topics, bringing that back to the overall Comp Plan Review Committee. It's going pretty well. Pretty quick, very efficient. Staff support has been outstanding. I'd like to say thank you for that. And all the volunteers that are on this committee, I'd like to thank them for their expertise that they bring to the table as well. I think the finished product is going to be great. We hope to give you very frequent and intensive updates on the work there for any immediate action that might need to happen. That's it for my report. I'll turn this over to the council. Start on the right this time. Councilor Carrier, committee reports.
All right, well, I was sort of hoping that you would start at the other side and work your way around to me because I'm going to be a little bit
You want me to
long.
start with Councilor Boss?
It would be easier because I'm going to be long-winded tonight.
Well, thank you for your honesty. Councilor Boss, committee reports.
Sure, just a quick update. You had asked a question last meeting about the Auburn Public Library and the impact of the PPP grant of about $150,000 on the budget. I've not yet heard back, but I will continue to follow up. We do have an Ag Committee meeting coming up next week where we'll be hosting Senator Nate Claxton to have a conversation about how we can integrate better into statewide efforts to increase ag and fuel economy in our region. I'm trying to think of what other committees we've got. You've already referenced the Comp Plan Committee. And I actually don't know. Can you provide an update on the Committee on Committees process and when we'll be meeting next?
The committee on committees, I'm sorry, I forgot. I'm waiting on Assistant City Manager Wood and staff to get that doodle poll out so we can meet with the committee chairs. That's really the last thing we're waiting on to get their feedback in order to put that in place in the final document. Mr. Wood, do you have an update for us on that one?
I'll go ahead and do it, Brian, thanks. So we have already, we've actually already scheduled those. We've already had a couple of those meetings, so those are done. Moving along, so we'll have all our meetings with the chairs. So we've already had
I'm sorry, done with what members of the committee? Was it just staff?
So this is staff giving them an update and providing comment back so we can bring it back to the mayor and council for any feedback.
Okay.
So that is already underway, so, and
Very
being
good.
scheduled.
Good, thank you. Is that it? Councilor Lasagna?
I wonder if we can get an update from the CAC committee when it comes around, just to hear.
I'm sorry, which one?
The Community Advisory Committee, because it was in our packet. One, was there any attempt to get a real diverse input on how the funding would be using? And the second one is, There's been a lot of discussion about mental health in this community, and was it ever considered using any of the CAC funds, particularly in the public service section, for mental health, increasing mental health services to the community? And second, I would like to ask about that point of order. So it is not a rule, or is it just process where people who submit an order get to speak first about it? Because by not being allowed to do that, particularly if it is tabled to a point uncertain, then it doesn't allow people who have presented the order to be able to discuss it.
So this is a report conversation, but I'm going to entertain your question just so we can answer it so you feel better about this. It is a courtesy that at times the mayor, in this case me, present, unless interrupted, because Robert's Rules takes precedence over any courtesy that I can provide. If a counselor interrupts with a motion to table, at that point that supersedes anything that I may allow or may kind of direct. Robert's Rules trumps the mayor.
Seems like a discourteous courtesy.
Bring it up with Robert. Councilor McLeod.
LATC is still doing their reach out to have the survey filled out, so if you haven't filled it out, please fill it out. The school building committee met last Tuesday. The new high school is pressing forward. General contractor pre-qualification was done, and the bid documents are ready to go. So if anybody would like a copy, it is 3,000 plus pages that you could purchase. And you already spoke about the comp plan, so good to go.
Very good. Councilor Gary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is more of another point of information. The luncheon that Councilor Walker, the good Councilor Walker discussed earlier was about the age-friendly finger roll luncheon that's going to be on December 30th from 12 to 3. In order to participate, you need to call the rec department, the senior center, to request a meal. One of these meals consists of 3 finger rolls, your choice of filling, a bag of chips, a bottle of water, and a Bismarck. And like, it's open to the public, and what they do is, like I said, they call the day of the event, they come up, they bring their car up to the front of the senior center out in the street. We get a call on our walkie-talkie that Mrs. Jones has come to pick up her lunch or 2 lunches. And then we have runners from the building come down with the food, they hand it to them, and then they take off and a new person comes up. So it's safety, COVID-friendly, and we just had an event for Thanksgiving, and it turned out excellent.
Well, great, thank you. Councilor Milks.
We had the budgets approved for the sewer and water this week with the public hearings, and everything was approved. As far as the CAC is concerned, we've been dealing with the changes in the CARES Act, new money, and some of the changes in scheduling due to conflicts and that sort of thing. So we haven't had a chance to delve into too much in depth with regards to new initiatives. It's been administrative mostly.
Very good, thank you. Councilor Walker.
Yeah, we had a meeting at 911, and most of it was around the budget. We are pretty much right on the numbers where we belong. The overtime, of course, is always the one that hurts us because we got people that come and go too often. It's a tough, stressful job, and it's hard to keep people for more than a year or two. We got 3 openings. I think we'll get them filled here within the next 3 months. They have to wait for school to open for them to go for training. And that right now isn't happening, but we think by January they'll have some openings. But other than that, they're working with the police departments, the fire departments, they're working with the new radios. They're trying to make sure everything is going correctly, and everything seems to be falling right into place right now. And then tomorrow, I have a meeting in the morning with Waste Management, Waste Energy here in Auburn. Thank you.
Councilor Carrier.
All righty. I'll start off with the school committee. It was nice having them come out tonight and be part of the budgetary process so that we can get some so the council can see some of the numbers that we're going to be dealing with. I will tell you, as far as the total fixed cost, that number is a wish and a dream as far as cost. We're expecting the fixed cost to be higher, especially with the contracts that have been negotiated. So you can plan on that number being higher. The school committee was audited. School department was audited by RKO. Once again, they've passed the audit with just a couple of small items. One is working with the city because they work on two different systems. There's a lot of work that has to go in with consolidating, comparing the two budgets. But they passed it very well with Ms. Eastman's help and along with Adam and Jackie's help. Put a lot of work into getting past that. The other item was with the school lunch program, and it was something just that needed to be printed out. It's not actually part of our booklet, and we had to add it to the booklet to bring us into Hoyle with that. And then the final thing was when they do their budgets for one year to the next year, say we were looking at your accrued time, they were figuring it at the next year's pay rate. According to the RKO, we need to do that at this year's rate as opposed to last year's, and it gives a truer picture of what the audit was for this year. So those are the items that they found, and as I said, there was no deficient items, so they passed very well. As far as the rest of it, you heard earlier tonight that the special education budget, for the first time in probably close to a decade, we're still in the black at this point. That's due to a lot of work. It's also due to several positions that are open. As the superintendent said tonight, that we have close to 17 ed tech positions that are open, and a couple of teaching positions, and a speech language pathologist that we just had to go to a contract to get because there was none available. The update as far as the projects go, today was the day that they submitted to DOE. The Walton bus loop is done. They've got that done. It looks really nice. You got to get a chance to go over there, take a look at it. The East Auburn and the Washburn portable buildings are in. They are being plumbed and worked in right now. There is a warranty issue with the building at East Auburn in regards to the heat pumps. We're working with Sciavi to take care of that. The AMS freezer unit is in. They've got that taken care of. That's going to give a lot more space to the school lunch program so that they're able to work out and have stuff stored properly. The AMS office work that was being done is nearing completion, but as everybody else has they're having problems getting workers to be able to finish that project off. If you get an opportunity to go over and take a look at that, it's really a nice addition to the school. The Franklin work, adding the elevators into the bathroom, that bid goes out on February 9th. They'll be entertaining bids at that point. They're doing the CIP walkthrough right now, and that'll continue on. They decided to sell off 7 surplus buses. They did manage to sell 5 of them. They still have 2. They do them in lots, and they contract out with a company. So we have gotten rid of 5 for $500 each. There will be a bus purchase request done, and even though that we've already purchased 4 buses this year, and the reason for that is the fact that if you don't participate in the program with the state, then there won't be a reimbursement, and then it's a down year. So if you do request 2 buses the year after, it'll be a year later than that when they would be reimbursed for. So they're just continuing on with the program, and they do have buses that fit that bill. The state did have more money as far as the COVID relief funds. We're calling this 2.0, but it has the same stipulation that the other money did, and that is that the money has to be spent by December 31st, and the item has to be in hand. So,
Councilor Carrier, not to interrupt, but as of just this weekend, the Senate bill that has yet to be signed into law unless it just happened this evening, extends unspent CARES money for 1 year past the December 20th deadline.
when they checked today, they told us we've got until December 31st to get it.
But this was, I mean, literally just happened this morning.
Well, I'll
Okay,
check
so
with the
it's
superintendent, because they had given us a billing stipulation that we could get the bill by February, but we had to have the item in hand.
So it's very fluid. In other words, I just want to let you know and let everybody know that is the proposal right now. It seems to have compromise agreement from both parties in both chambers of the House. So I think it's going to be sent up for presidential signature soon. But it will give it a further 12-month delay on the expenditure of the first CARES Act monies.
And that was $500,000, another $500,000. And that money came from the original CARES money, but it was money that had been unspent by other schools. So that money is being looked at for curriculum, PPE, and supplies. And it still has to be approved by DOE, but it's an additional $500,000.
Counselor Carrier, I didn't hear in the very beginning, what were you saying about the $1.7 million fixed cost? That it's not actually a fixed cost?
They are fixed costs, but that's a conservative estimate. We have contracts that we're currently negotiating and that have just finished negotiating, and those will affect those costs.
Do you know by how much? Because it sounds like there's just one contract still being negotiated. Is that correct?
The cost for the other contracts have not been tabulated yet. That was what was told us. So we were looking at 1.7 a month ago, and we have done a contract since then. So,
okay.
The next item I have is the airport board. The work is continuing on that. We did settle with the insurance company for the damage from the incident at the airport. We did get money for that. And as we're able to do the work, because all work is stopped out there for right now with the exception of snow plowing. As we're able to spend that money next year, they will tap that account and spend it to repair the runway that needs to be done. And we'll be able to finish that up. The other item that came before us at the airport board was the fact that part of the CIP has been to repair the eastern ramp. And for those of you that don't know, it's the side that's on Hotel Road. The ramp over there has not been done in a considerable amount of time and is starting to degrade. And that's also the side where you have regular aircraft, but you also have helicopters that are taking off out there. Not only Life Flight, there's another private owner out there, as well as the fact that we have military use of the field. We've had the Navy utilize our field, and we've also had the Canadian Air Force that has used it. And you don't want a piece of concrete or asphalt to fly up as the rotors are turning and damage a helicopter. So they've got a program to repair the eastern ramp with FAA money, but there is a cost involved that comes before the project, and it's the engineering cost, which currently would be $276,000. That cost has to be paid up front before, and it would be reimbursed with the FAA grant. Split two ways, that money would be roughly $136,000 ballpark in there. We'll get the exact numbers as to what it is because we've heard two different numbers. 235 was the first, 276 was the second. So, but it would be a cost that we would have to split with Lewiston. Once the grant is done, that money would be reimbursed, and the only cost that would be out of that would be the 5% split between Lewiston and Auburn. So we would be responsible for 2.5% of that, and I believe that that's roughly $6,900, depending on the cost of the overall thing. But this is so that we can repair the eastern ramp. There are 2 T hangars that are over there that are a lot of aircraft in, plus we have the Life Flight hangar and the old Silver Wings. So there is business out there, but that we can get that done. It's a $700,000 grant, and it would put us well on the way to being able to do that. There'll be part of the work that can't be done with the FAA. They go by what's there now. They don't get up close to the hangars and things like that. So there would be some work that would have to be done in years coming. But right now, they're looking for the upfront money for the engineering report. They wanted us to bring it before the council for a vote on the 4th. Know that Lewiston is working on their council that'll go before them on the 7th. And either giving them the 135 outright from the city or allowing them to use money that's already in the, help me out.
It's already in the capital fund. It was budgeted for the parking lot that's for the public that comes and parks at the terminal. And that project has been, it's going to be way more money than what we had appropriated. And so we've been trying to pare it down, haven't been able to do that. So that money's just been sitting there for a couple of years. We have $150,000, and I recommended that to Brian that we, if you so choose, to take that money, use it to do our portion of the engineering, and then when we get reimbursed, we'll put it back, and it'll still be there for the landside parking.
The prospect is high for us getting this grant, and we should never turn down free money, especially when it's going to improve a facility that we own, at least 50% of. It's all in Auburn. Just wanted to be able to put that on for the agenda item on the next meeting for your thoughts. That's all I've got.
Are you sure?
God, I hope so.
That's some good stuff. No one can ever say you don't attend a lot of meetings. And thank you very much for those reports.
What's the total payroll that is still being negotiated? The total payroll?
For the airport?
No, for the teachers? That's the contract being,
the
ballpark?
Well, our budget is $44 million, and you heard Dr. Brown say tonight that it's roughly about 80% of our budget.
So that's what's still got to be.
Well, we're going to, I mean, we have vacant positions. Those are positions that have been funded, but we can't hire anybody because nobody will come to work for us. So, I mean, there's a little bit of play in there, but those are positions that we actually need. So, I just think that, if we know where they're coming from, as we've talked to them tonight, we get a ballpark. I don't want this to be an us versus them. I don't want to frame it that way in any way, shape, or form. The mayor passed on what our expectation is. I've told them what my expectation was, having talked to you folks, and now they're able to see what we're looking for and what direction that they need to be moving. So, there's going to be some tough decisions. I mean, there's not, this money that we're talking about tonight is not going to be there, at least not in this form. I mean, we spent $6.5 million. $6.5 million, and that's on top of the budget we already had. So, I don't think that we'll see that money again.
So to answer Councilor Lasagna, you said how much conservative, because that 1.7 million didn't include the teacher's contract, as I understand.
Some of the contracts. We've done 3 contracts. We still have, as I said tonight, still have another contract to go. And I don't know if the cost from the last contract is in there.
So
we're looking at $760,000 in teacher increases. $760,000 in increase.
Above that's 1.7.
And
that was part of it.
And that's to maintain basically where we, so that we can take a look at it.
So because our mill rate's so high, it hurts us on that's
the other
correct.
end. Because they think that we have more money to be able to pay for education.
and hence the formulas. Thank you very much for that. But it's good that we're starting it now. This is by far, I think, the earliest we've ever started these conversations with regards to budget in my memory.
So that number's really 2.5.
Right now, the number, including the
They
delta
said
of potential
1.7
loss,
with-
we're looking at about 2.7 million, potentially, and a revenue shortfall, if you would. That has to be made up somehow, if you count. I mean, we got to see what Augusta's going to do. I'm going to be working with the other mayors through the Mayor's Coalition to continue the lobbying efforts for understanding at the Department of Education with regards to decrease in enrollment and how that's going to bump up. So 3-year rolling average or a little bit of slack is good. I think a lot of it has to do with revenue. So I'm going to move on, and that segues nicely into Ms. Eastman talking about the revenue report and the projections 5 months into the fiscal year.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I don't want to skip you too
That's all right.
much. We'll go with the manager. But
I
I mean, that
just
was
have
a
a
great
couple
segue.
things.
though.
It was a good segue.
Segueing
so-
right in.
And I'll interrupt that segue then. So, just a couple things for the council. One, during my last report, under communications, I believe it was, we mentioned regarding a marijuana license that the staff rejected because of information received from the state through an appeal that was requested. Will not be coming before you because after further review by staff, the state had made an error in their report that they had provided us. That's been corrected. That license is now moving forward with approval. So I just want to make you aware of that. There is still one that was rejected. And Sue, the appeal process is probably completed by now, right? For the one that we did deny?
I'm having a really hard time hearing you, but yeah, they're following through with the review process. They need to have their inspections done and all of that.
The other license that we denied, that is now done for an appeal, correct?
They have not, and the timeframe has expired, so. Yeah.
So I just want to update the council on that. Second thing was to thank Library Director Mamie Nay and the library board. We got communication today that as we move forward with the Auburn Adventures program, the funding is ending, as we've heard, December 31st. The need is still there. So we have been working with parents on what we'll do moving forward. But fortunately, the library was able to advise us that we'll be able to use that space and continue using the space for the site that we have there at no cost to the program, which will be a great benefit for parents. So we're able to reduce those fees to ensure that they're able to provide the proper programming. We are waiting to hear from registrations, and we're waiting to hear from the state regarding those funds. We hope that we'll be able to receive more funds to continue that program through the end of the school year. We currently have nearly 200 students enrolled in that program, which would then allow parents to be able to work through the full school week. So just as a quick update on you on that. That's it. Thank you, Mayor.
Ms. Eastman?
Okay, you have the November report now. Last meeting I gave you October. This one's a little more current. And we're still looking very good. As you can see, we're at 47.06 for the total budget. Just the municipal side on revenue is at 49.34, which is about 7.5% above projections. A couple of the areas, our excise tax, we are $349,000 more than we were at the same time last year. We're 11.55% above projections for this time of year. And the revenue sharing is $301,000 over where it was last year in November. And property taxes are at 50%, which is higher. You know, normally we're about 50% this time. So I'm very happy with those numbers. You know, I'm not concerned at this point, and I watch them all the time. And the expenditures are where I would expect. The areas that we've talked about the last couple of months are the reason why we're over. The transfers that I made early, I was just I had a few minutes to do some of those things, which normally I would you know, I prefer to do them before mid-year. I did check, because last time you questioned the fire department and why were they over. And the reason they are over is I transferred they have a capital reserve account, and we budget for that every year. That account's used to buy their ambulances and so forth. I transferred that money over to the special revenue account because we ordered a new ambulance. I wanted the money to be there when we put the PO out. So that's why that's $150,000. Normally it would have been later in the year. But otherwise, the regular departments look good. They're where I expect them to be, and so I'm not concerned at this point.
Anybody have any questions for Ms. Eastman concerning the finances? None being. Thank you. At this time, I'd entertain a motion to accept and place on file the November 2020 monthly finance report.
So moved.
Second. Councilor Carey, do I have a second?
Second.
Second for Councilor Milks. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Passes 7-0. Next, we have an executive session. It's a personnel matter pursuant to 1 MRSA, Section 405. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
A motion from Councilor Carey, second from Councilor Walker. Excuse me, all those in favor? Raise your hand. Opposed? None being. We'll now stand in executive session, and for those watching from home, we have no other business in front of this council that is public, just one other executive session, so we will go dark at this time. Thank you. We now stand in executive session.